vulnerable to cross-site flashing. And as you can see, the movie URI global variable is actually used inside a native flash method, which actually takes uploads a flash file and embeds it inside the browser.
Download.
Download, yeah. Sorry.
So what will happen if the user or an attacker will send you a link to this following URL? We see the movie SWF. This is the vulnerable flash file containing this action script. And in the movie URI will actually put some malicious flash file. What will actually happen is that the original flash file will be shown in your browser, but that flash file will be tricked to load the malicious flash file. And that malicious flash file will have access to the same content that appears in this flash player, in the vulnerable flash player. And that malicious flash file will be able to change the content or to retrieve content out of it. In some cases, it will also be able to interact with the website that the vulnerable flash is hosted on. So this is the impact of this is very similar to the impact that we see in cross-site scripting all the time.
Okay, so the second attack that we're going to talk about is cross-site scripting through Flash. Now, this is actually triggering a classic cross-site scripting attack by actually attacking the Flash file itself. And this can be done using several native Flash methods that can trigger JavaScript code. Okay. So this is actually an example of vulnerable code. As you can see here, the global variable URL is used inside the method called getURL, which actually is used to redirecting the browser to a different location. And when it is used here, we can actually trigger cross-site scripting. We're going to show you how. Let's first look at the normal usage of the application. This is actually a Flash movie that we've developed that shows 10 different Flash attacks, cross-site flashing and cross-site scripting for Flash attacks. Each button triggers a different, it's actually vulnerable to a different attack. Now, if we click on this button, the browser will be redirected to a different location.
And that is actually in the code, that is the default URL that is written in the code. So if we saw in the example before, that would be something like this. What will happen if the attacker will send you this attack vector? So as you can see here, the global variable is overwritten with this JavaScript piece of code, which contains an alert. And if we try to execute that, the alert will pop up. Okay? Questions so far?
Okay. In order to better present the problem that these attack vectors share, we need to talk about another thing one more thing that we haven't discussed yet, and this is the fact that sometimes a Flash movie cannot be loaded when it's not embedded inside the original HTML page. Now this can happen because of various reasons. One is because Flash tends to interact with the DOM. And so Flash might not be able to load because it needs some part of the DOM of the original HTML page and cannot load. Another reason is because of security. For example, the developer of the Flash movie can decide that it will not allow the Flash to load unless it is embedded inside the original HTML environment.
So if some Flash file actually interacts with the browser, when it will be loaded separately, it won't be able to execute some of its code. We can see an example for this in many websites, such as Google Finance. Here you can see an HTML page containing some HTML and JavaScript pieces of code, as well as a Flash file that appears here. And when I go and perform some actions on the Flash file itself, that actually changes the HTML that we see here. So every action on the flash causes some pieces of JavaScript to get executed. And if those pieces of JavaScript were not existed in the embedded HTML, in the HTML that actually works as a parent for the flash file, then this would not work. And the opposite can happen as well. I can press on some parts of the HTML, and as you can see, the flash reflects those changes.
Okay, so this is what we want to talk about. So all known examples of flash attacks that we have seen, that we have talked about, they all need to, as we said, manipulate global flash variables. Now, all of them share one thing, is that they access the movie directly. They use they actually access the movie directly in order to inject these parameters into the flash file.
The attack vector would be that I, as an attacker, send you a link to the vulnerable flash file together with the question mark and the injection of the global variable. This would be the way that I will attack you.
But as we've seen, some flash movies cannot load when are not embedded inside the original HTML environment. So this means that these movies can actually not be exploited. Even if they are vulnerable to some of the attacks we've talked about, the attack cannot be executed because the flash will just not load when accessing directly. So actually, this is the technique that we have discovered and we want to talk about, flash parameter injection, which is actually all about injecting these global variables into the flash movie while it is still embedded inside the original HTML environment. Any questions? Okay.
Okay, so sorry.
You find some vulnerabilities in the flash cookies in the flash cookie?
We're going to discuss flash cookies later on, and there is a technique that allows us to do that through flash cookies as well. So we're going to show that. Okay, so the first example is relatively simple. We have here a server-side code that dynamically creates some HTML data. The location of the movie that will be loaded is actually submitted as an HTTP parameter. So what will happen in the regular use case is that the user will surf to this HTTP, or CGI, or any server-side script such as server-side code such as ASP, J2EE, JSP, and etc. And the content of the flash file will be shown here. Now, as a simple attack would be that I would send the content of the regular flash file, but I will also add the question mark and inject the global variable. So what will happen actually, that the HTML that will be generated out of this will be this HTML containing the global variable that I have passed. So what I'm doing is I'm passing the global variable to the HTML page, or the server-side code that creates the HTML page, and there is a vulnerability in that HTML page or server-side code that actually allows me to pass this global parameter through that, so that the flash player will analyze this and see that there is a new global variable and he needs to define it.
Okay, another attack, another server-side attack is what we call piggybacking flash vars, and this is the case where an HTML parameter is actually used inside the flash vars attribute. For example, for this example, the language variable. So as you can see,